Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are getting into a world that, for so many of us, feels like this complex maze full of traps and, secret rules. I'm talking about APA style.
It absolutely can feel that way.
If you've ever written a paper, in the social sciences or maybe submitted a manuscript, that style guide can just feel incredibly daunting.
It can. But I think the reason it feels so daunting is that we're often fighting rules that don't exist anymore, or even worse, rules that never existed in the first place.
So that's our mission for this deep dive.
It's our mission to cut through all that confusion and give you the knowledge you need to, confidently use the APA 7th edition.
We're going to be talking about the zombie guidelines. These are the outdated rules from the 6th edition or even earlier that just refuse to stay buried.
And we're going to tackle the ghost guidelines, too.
Ah, the ghosts. The myths that were never official APA rules to begin with.
Exactly, because fundamentally, APA style is so much more than just a set of instructions on where to put a comma. It's really a system for clear, professional, and accessible scholarly communication.
And if you know the principles behind it, you can apply them to anything.
You can. So our goal for you today is simple. When we're done here, you should have the knowledge to spot check those automatic citation tools, challenge outdated instructions, and just write without feeling held hostage by all those irrelevant, nitpicky details.
Okay, so where do we even begin with all this?
Well, the experts recommend focusing on 3 core areas first. We call them the 3 style starters.
The 3 style starters, what are they?
Paper format, references, and inclusive language.
Okay, let's start with paper format. I imagine this is where most people get stuck, worrying about the exact font or the margin width.
They do, but the overarching goal is just consistency. You want the paper to look professional, polished, and, easy to read. And here's the massive relief. The 7th edition actively encourages you to lean on the tools you already have. Your word processor, Word, Google Docs, whatever it is. A lot of the default settings, like 1-inch margins or certain fonts, are already APA compliant.
So you're not just saying use a tool, you're saying really leverage that tool's function.
Precisely. Use the built-in features to globally apply things like heading styles, line spacing, that tricky hanging indent for your references.
Why is that so important?
Because it's not just about making it look uniform. Using those tools actually creates documents that are far more accessible for screen readers and other assistive technologies.
Yeah.
When you use the heading 1 function, a screen reader can actually navigate the structure of your paper.
Oh, wow. So proper formatting is really an accessibility feature, not just an aesthetic one.
It is. And for most student work, you really only need those 3 basic sections, a title page, the main text, and the reference list. That just strips away so much of the complexity.
That does make it feel less overwhelming. Okay, so what's the second starter?
References. And this is the area where people often feel the most panic.
Because there are hundreds of different source types, right? A podcast reference is different from a book, which is different from a government document.
Yeah, and it seems impossible to memorize.
It does.
But you don't have to. Every single reference type, no matter how obscure it is, it boils down to answering just 4 basic questions about the source.
And this is the famous ADTS structure.
Correct. We just need to know, A, the author who's responsible for this work, D, the date, when was it published, T, the title, what's it called, and S, the source. Where can I go find it?
And there's a mnemonic for that, isn't there?
There is. We often suggest something like all dogs take stock to help people remember that order. Author, date, title, source.
And if you know those 4 parts, you can basically assemble any reference, even for something unusual.
Exactly. And that is so crucial today because we all use automatic citation generators. And those tools are great, but they often make small mistakes. If you only rely on the generator, you're stuck when it messes up. But if you know that ADTS foundation, you can spot check and fix those errors immediately. You're in control.
That ability to spot check is huge. I've seen them mess up capitalization, confuse DOIs with URLs. So what if one of those 4 pieces of information is missing?
Great question. We use the cite what's there principle. The reference information has to be evident to the reader. You don't need to go digging through a website's source code to find some hidden publication date.
Okay, so if it's not on the title page or the first screen, you just treat it as missing.
Right. So if the date is missing, you just use ND for no date. If there's no issue number for a journal, you just omit it. You cite what's readily available. This is meant to simplify things, not turn you into a detective.
That makes sense. Okay, that brings us to the 3rd style starter, which is pretty unique to APA style in its depth. Inclusive language.
This is a huge component of the 7th edition. The guidance on bias-free language is incredibly robust. It's a full chapter in the manual. There are extensive free guides online.
And it's not just prescriptive, right? It's based on research.
Exactly. It's guidance built on decades of psychological science, focused on reducing bias, promoting dignity, and ensuring clarity when we write about people. It's about acknowledging that our language impacts how research is perceived.
Now that we have that foundation, let's zoom out a bit. Flexibility and change, because these guidelines change, what, every 7 to 10 years? And that raises a big question. Who has the final say?
This is maybe the single most important thing we can talk about today. The APA-style guidelines are actually secondary to your class and institutional needs.
Wait, really? So local rules can supersede APA rules?
Yes.
But isn't the whole point of a style guide to create standardization across the field?
In theory, yes. But in practice, local communication is often more important. If your university requires a specific format for dissertations that conflicts with a minor APA rule, the university rule wins.
So if my instructor requires a running head on every student paper, even though the 7th edition made it optional,
You do the running head. The people on the ground know what they need for grading or archiving, and the style manual respects that.
that makes perfect sense. But let's talk about the style itself. Why does it change so often?
3 main reasons. First, feedback from the global community. People write in and tell the APA-style team what's confusing or cumbersome. Second, technology.
Right. Social media, video, and now AI-generated text like ChatGPT
And the third, which I love, is a relentless drive towards simplification.
to make the user's life easier.
Absolutely. The goal is always to avoid bogging people down in nitpicky details that don't help clear communication. That's what led to the big changes in the 7th edition.
Like what? What were some of the big ones?
Well, a bigger emphasis on student papers, making them way easier to format, the full endorsement of the singular they, simpler in-text citations, and yes, definitively settling the war on spacing.
Oh, the one space after a sentence.
One space after a sentence. I remember when that dropped, the academic world nearly imploded. People who learned 2 spaces felt like they were losing a piece of their identity.
That was a real moment. Okay, let's get to it. Let's tackle the rules that just won't die. The zombie guidelines.
All right. These were absolutely true in older editions, but the 7th edition has officially buried them.
Give us the first one.
The battle between participants versus subjects.
Right. I was always taught to avoid subjects, that it was dehumanizing.
And that older rule did suggest that. But that rigid rule was dropped after the 5th edition.
The 5th, wow.
Yeah. So while using descriptive terms like college students is often best, both participants and subjects are perfectly acceptable, especially for technical terms like a within subjects design.
Okay, that's a big one. What's next?
Numbers in the abstract. I'm sure you remember the old rule.
You had to use numerals for every single number to save space and ink.
That zombie is long gone. That was for when abstracts were physically printed in huge volumes. Now they're mostly digital, so that space limit is irrelevant. Just apply the standard number rules. One less thing to memorize.
I think this next one brought universal relief. The death of retrieved from.
A huge relief. That awkward phrase, retrieved from before a URL, it's not needed anymore. The link itself signals retrieval, and DOIs are now just formatted like any other link.
And what about retrieval dates? That was always a point of stress.
Retrieval dates are almost never needed. You only include one if the page's content is designed to change over time, is not archived, and has no permanent link.
Like live election results or something.
Exactly, or daily data dashboards. But for something like Wikipedia, which changes constantly but is archived,
You don't need a retrieval date.
you do not. That's a crucial distinction. If the site is just undated, you still use ND, but you don't clutter the reference with an access date.
Okay, another simplification. Publisher location.
Buried. For books, the city and state of the publisher are not needed anymore. In the digital era, that information doesn't help the reader find the source at all. It was just confusing, so it was jettisoned.
Let's talk about quotes. I was always taught you must use a page number.
That requirement for only page numbers is a zombie. The 7th edition's goal is just to help the reader find the exact quote. Page numbers are great for a physical book, but what about a website?
Right.
You should use paragraph numbers, section names, or, and this is great for modern research timestamps, for things like podcasts or YouTube videos.
Using timestamps just makes so much sense. What about journal issue numbers? That always felt complicated.
The complex rules are gone. It used to depend on confusing internal journal pagination structures. It was a nightmare. Now the rule is simple. If an issue number exists, you always include it.
And finally, a big one for students. Running heads.
Running heads are not required for student papers in the 7th edition.
Not required.
They're still needed for professional manuscripts being submitted for publication, but students can usually omit them. Unless, of course.
Their instructor has invoked that institutional precedence rule.
Exactly.
Excellent. We've laid the zombies to rest. Now we move on to the ghost guidelines, the myths that were never actually rules to begin with.
Right. These ghosts often come from confusing APA with, say, general journalistic rules or just things that have spread across campus culture for decades.
Okay, what's the biggest ghost you can think of?
Oh, easily. The idea that you absolutely cannot use first and second person pronouns, the myth that I, we, and you were banned.
Is that true, or is that academic lore?
That is absolutely a ghost guideline. Myth busted. It is okay, and often it's preferable, to use I, we, and you for clarity. Use I if you're the single author. Use we if you're a co-author.
So instead of that awkward, the authors analyzed, I should just write, we analyzed.
Yes. The 7th edition explicitly endorses direct communication. It makes complex scientific writing much clearer and less clumsy. Now, an instructor can still enforce a local rule against it, but official APA style fully endorses it.
Another ghost. Does APA use footnotes for citations, like Chicago style?
Total ghost. Since 1929, APA has always used in-text, author date citations. Footnotes are only for content notes, like tangential information or copyright attribution, never for the primary citation.
Okay, what about the phantom rule that sources have to be under 5 or 10 years old? Every student worries about this.
One of the most persistent ghosts. There is no APA rule about source age. It depends entirely on context. If you're writing a history of a theory, you need old sources. If you're reporting on cutting-edge science, you need new sources.
The assignment dictates what's legitimate, not the year.
Precisely.
And what about set formats for things like CVs or PowerPoint presentations?
Nope. APA style doesn't dictate formats for those. But the principles of APA still apply. You should still aim for clarity, concise writing, inclusive language. But you should use existing templates for those kinds of documents.
I remember a rule about only using surnames in citations. Is it okay to use a full name in the text?
Full names are absolutely allowed in the narrative text when you need them for clarity.
Like distinguishing Anna Freud from Sigmund Freud.
Perfect example. Or just highlighting a prominent figure. They're only restricted in the parenthetical citations.
And finally, does APA say what is or isn't an acceptable source? Does it ban Wikipedia?
Absolutely not. APA gives you the format for citing everything, including retracted articles, Wikipedia, social media. The style manual provides the format. The context of your assignment dictates the acceptability.
We've cleared the fog, killed the zombies, and chased away the ghosts. I think the big takeaway here is that the 7th edition is just designed to be easier and more flexible.
That's the essence of it. And your best defense against future confusion is knowing where to find the definitive answers.
So tell us, where should we go for that authoritative information?
Start with the official APA-style website. It has tons of free guides, handouts, sample papers. For the definitive rules, there's the full publication manual, or if you're a student, the concise guide to APA style is probably all you need.
And for practice.
There's the Mastering APA Style Student Workbook. It's an online tool that makes you engage with the manual. It trains you to look up the answers yourself, which is really the only way to master the style.
So the 7th edition respects modern research needs. It's about clear communication, not about, punishing you for using one space instead of two.
And that leads us back to our core principle. Here's a final provocative thought for you to ponder.
Okay.
If APA style explicitly allows institutional rules to supersede its own guidelines, what does that really tell us about the ultimate goal of citation styles? Is it strictly about standardization across the entire academic field? Or is it fundamentally about achieving effective local communication within your specific community?
That is a great question to keep in mind for your next paper. Go forth and write confidently. We'll see you on the next deep dive.